Hi, this is Joe again with another movie review, and this is usually the time of the year where a lot of children's movies will come out, so parents will take them during the holiday season. But this time I'm going to do movies that I grew up with, but these three particular movies came out during the summer and not during the Christmas movie season. And I'm going to be discussing the Muppet Movie trilogy. And I'm going to be discussing the Muppet movies, or the four Muppet films that came out after Jim Henson's death in 1990, because I think all of them were, to me, was disappointing. Maybe because I outgrew it. I was in my 20s when a lot of those movies came out, so I outgrew those films. But I'm talking about the movies, the Muppet Treasure Island, which I think was like the worst of the Muppet movies. That one came out. Then you had, and then of course you had the great the Muppet Christmas Carol. You had Muppets from Space, which you find out pretty much Gonzo's origins, and the whole Area 51 type thing. And of course, more recently in 2011, you had a movie called The Muppets. And that particular movie got pretty well rave reviews, but the other films, I think the Muppet Christmas Carol got pretty decent reviews. But the other two were like just, bombs, because today's kids don't relate to it. But when these three films came out, I'm going to be discussing them, because I'm going to be discussing them in order. Kids could relate to it, at least I could, because it was at the right age. But by the time the second movie came out, I was already overage already by that time. And of course, by the time the third movie came out, I was already 13. So, but the movie was still entertaining enough because I still have good memories of watching the Muppet Show. Of course, as we were watching Sesame Street, and then of course they had Jim Henson created the Muppet Show in the 70s. So I was in the right age to really appreciate the Muppets and so let's get the eventual movies. So we're discussing the first one, which came out in 1979, which is of course the Muppet Movie. Because those who don't know the actual plot, this is supposed to be a movie that introduces how Kermit the Frog and his friends became famous. And I have to warn you that these movies, and all the Muppets you see in these movies, are Muppets from the original Muppet Show from the 70s and early 80s. The only character that you crossed over from Sesame Street into the Muppet Show was, of course, Kermit the Frog. But in the three films that we're discussing, we do have a cameo of a character from, at least one character from Sesame Street. And of course, in the Muppet Movie here, you have a cameo of Big Bird. And the second movie is going to be discussing in a minute has a cameo from Oscar the Grouch. And the third movie, you had practically all the Muppets from the Muppet Show and Sesame Street in it. Well, the first one came out in 1979, and like I said, this movie became a huge hit, so they made two other films, and Jim Henson was still alive. And it's basically the story where Kermit the Frog, they have a private screening of the Muppet Movie, because it's like a movie within a movie in this particular one. And it's basically in the rest of the movie. You see the movie how Kermit the Frog became famous and have the whole Muppet Theater and became the big the most famous frog in Hollywood. And this movie is very very good, very good film. I still enjoy, even though I'm not a kid anymore. I'm currently 42 years old, so I'm not a kid anymore. I still enjoy watching these Muppet, the three Muppet movies. And of course, what made this movie really terrific is the cameos. This one and the Muppet Take Manhattan, great cameos from celebrities, from Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy to Orson Welles, who was the last real big cameo, was Orson Welles. You had Bob Hope, you had Richard Pryor, you had Milton Berle, you also had the villain, who was played by Charles Journey. Unfortunately, except for Cloris Leachman, who does make an appearance in this movie, practically all the people who make cameos in the Muppet Movie have died, except for Paul Williams, who wrote the music for it. And let me tell you, the songs in this particular movie are the best ones of race. I can't tell from the other movies that came out in the 90s or after the Muppets Take Manhattan. I can't really talk about the songs in that, because I've seen clips of it, but not the entire film, because it wasn't that good. So then, that's why I'm not talking about those films. And Paul Williams wrote the songs for this film. When I say the Rainbow Connection and all those songs. So the storyteller was coming in the swamp, and he meets his talent agent. And he's seeing the Rainbow Connection in the swamp, and he sees his talent agent and says, "Hey, you look good. Maybe you come out and represent you and be your agent, and you come out to Hollywood and you'll be famous." So he goes along. That's of course the most scene that most people remember or talk about in this film was Kermit riding his bicycle. Down the street riding his bicycle. And of course, people like to see it so much they repeated the same bit in the Great Muppet Caper, and instead of just Kermit, it's like the whole Muppet gang was riding bicycles. So I'll get to that movie in a minute. But actually, of course, since he was singing in this bar, Charles Journey, who runs this kind of almost like a McDonald's ripoff or Burger King ripoff, instead of having hamburgers, it has frog legs, or frog hamburgers and frog leg burgers and all that type of thing. So of course he was coming to do the commercials. Of course he refuses, and Charles Journey, plays the character, follows him across the country. And then eventually they have the showdown in a ghost town. And of course, the Muppets come on top. And of course, they go to Hollywood and they get this contract, and which is like too quick of a scene for me, when they're getting the contract. But that's the only real problem I have with the movie. Even though it's practically a perfect family movie. But no matter how old you are, it's great. Unfortunately, the kids today won't relate to these Muppet movies because Elmo is not in it. There's no Elmo. There's no Abby Cadabby. There's no computers. There's no internet. There's none of that stuff in it because it came out in 1979. Like I said, this movie made a bunch of money, and then 3 years later, it came out with The Great Muppet Caper. And of course, it came out in 1982, and this movie is the basic story is that Kermit and Fozzie are reporters, and Gonzo is the photographer, and they go to London because of this famous big jewel heist. And of course, this is like the first time we didn't have actual main cameos or celebrities in this particular movie. You had humans who were the central part of the plot. You had Diana Rigg, who played Lady Hardy, supposed to be this rich woman who owns this modeling agency, and Miss Piggy, of course, being one of the radio secretary that eventually became a model in the agency. And then, of course, she ends up getting robbed. And the culprit, I'm not going to give away who the culprit is, but Charles Gouin. Oh, okay, what the hell? Spoiler. Charles Gouin, who plays Diana Rigg's brother, is the jewel thief. And Kermit and Fozzie trying to prove that Miss Piggy didn't steal it, but her brother stole it. And that's, basically the whole plot with the Muppets were really secondary characters compared to the main villains and stuff. But it's not as good as the Muppet Movie, or the movie that we'll be talking about next, but it's need to follow. But actually, of course, the problem that I have with this one This was in the original Muppet movie. You didn't have, one of the classic running jokes is the fact that it's a movie. There's a movie. There's a movie. And you did have a couple of scenes. One particular scene in the Muppet movie where they talk to the band and said, "This is a movie. Here's the script." So they got in jokes about being a film. And this one they almost use almost exact same jokes. Not as much as in the Muppet movie, but enough that was annoying because they did almost the same shtick as in the first one. Because the whole opening sequence, you didn't have a song and dance number where you had the Muppets and you had humans going, "It's a movie." And we're starring everybody but me and me and me and me and me. And, I mean, it was annoying. First few minutes of the film, to me it was annoying. It said they're going to do this the whole movie. When I originally saw it, that's what my first reaction was. And as soon as I didn't think it was going to be as good, but it was. It was entertaining enough for the whole family. But to me, it became annoying because they did that joke, and then about 3/4 away for the movie, they had one of the typical argument, which was always fun to watch, between Miss Piggy and Kermit the Frog. And Kermit says to Piggy, "You're hamming it up. You're hamming it up for the role. For the movie. You don't ham it up so much." I mean, they had that type. They did that joke, and that was the end of it. But at least, thankfully, this movie was also pretty successful. They had a line with Burger King that gave out glasses for the film, in conjunction with the film. Which each week they give out a different glass with a different scene in it. But this movie was good enough, and also, like I said earlier, had a cameo of Oscar the Grouch in this film, which is pretty funny. You see all of a sudden, 3/4 away from the movie, you see Oscar the Grouch. But like I said, it also made a lot of money, so actually it was 2 years. And this time they didn't have to wait for so long for another Muppet movie to come out, because in 1984 you had the third and final film that was made before Jim Henson died, and that was, of course, The Muppets Take Manhattan. At least this time you didn't have all those in jokes saying it's a movie. We're making a movie, and all those songs. Because this movie is about when the Muppet gang, Kermit and Fozzie and Piggy and all the other Muppets from the Muppet Show, were in college, and they did a Broadway show. Not a Broadway show, a senior variety show called Manhattan Melodies. And the student, naturally, because when the performance was over, they got a standing ovation. The whole college audience loved it. And so Kermit comes out, makes a speech. "So I want to thank you for, liking the show, and we had a great time being in college, and all that type of thing. And we really worked hard on the show." And somebody in the audience yelled out, "Hey Kermit, maybe we see the show on Broadway." So they planned the scene that had maybe go on Broadway and put us on a Broadway show. And of course, so the whole Muppet Gang comes to New York, and they tried to get the show on Broadway, and then of course they got denied from every Broadway agent in town. So the whole gang leaves. It's like the saddest part of the film, when the whole gang leaves and Kermit decides to stay in town, try and get the show on Broadway. You do see several landmarks in New York City, including Sawyer's Restaurant, which is famous. That's where they announced 20 awards and 20 award nominations, I should say. And it was very good. You do see, and also what made this movie better than the Great Muppet Caper was he had great celebrity cameos. You had Liza Minnelli, you had Joan Rivers, you had Brooke Shields, you had those cameos. Plus, you also had Gregory Hines, of course, has passed away since then. when you had also you had humans involved with the plot, which didn't and felt didn't work so well in the Great Muppet Caper, but worked well in Muppets Take the Hand. The concept. You had Juliana Donald, who played Jenny, who was the daughter of this diner which Krummer was working in while he was playing Get the Show on Broadway. And it was her father, played by Louis Zorich. Of course, you might recognize he was in the Film on the Roof movie, plus another great television show they did in '91 called Brooklyn Bridge. He played the grandfather in that. So, but you also have Lonnie Price, of course you might recognize, and who was later on, like 3 years later, was in Dirty Dancing. He played the grandson of the owner of the resort. And they were helping out in the film, so helping Kermit out to get the show on Broadway. And of course you had cameos by Linda Lavin. You had Connie for the Honeymooners. You also had the mayor of New York at that time, Ed Koch, also made cameos in this film. So you had great cameos, and they weren't annoying. Unlike in Great Muppet Caper when they were annoying, in this movie they weren't so annoying, and they had great cameos, and they had great plot, and then we had a great script, and everything. To me, everything worked. In Muppets Take the Hand, everything worked. And of course, what's notable in this movie is that Kermit the Frog and Miss Piggy they actually get married at the end of this film. I know I'm giving it away, but the movie does get on Broadway. And the original thing was that the big Gonzo was supposed to play the priest. But unfortunately, Piggy tricked Kermit, like she always did in the original Muppet Show and throughout the movies. She tricked him, and instead of getting Gonzo playing the priest, he had an actual priest, an actual minister performing the wedding ceremony. And of course Kermit says, wait a minute, Gonzo was supposed to be the minister. And of course she laughs, got one on you, Kermit, got one on you. And of course they got married, which is of course, other than the Greg and Jenny wedding on All My Children, which happened the same year that this movie came out. This was like the second biggest wedding of 1984, or fake wedding in 1984. I consider it to be a fake wedding, but they actually did get married. And of course, naturally nowadays, when Kermit makes an appearance someplace, or an interview, or when he did the last Muppet movie came out, he did interviews, and as nobody brought up that they actually got married and stuff. Was always going to get married, and of course the puppeteer, Kermit's puppeteer, doesn't say, "Hey, we did get married." And Muppets Take the Hand. And there's no references to that film, or the ending of that. But I'm going to say that these three movies were really, like I said, really enjoyable films. And here's all three films in Muppet Movie, the Muppet Caper, and of course Muppets Take the Hand. So of course, if you want your kids or grandkids to relate to these films, you can actually watch the Muppet shows to get about an idea of what it is. Because the Muppet Show, which these movies were based on, was also great back in the day. Very great entertaining film, television show, and it aired nightly. So on every night you had a different guest star, but it was guest stars of that time. And of course, nowadays I don't think the celebrities would do the Muppet Show today. If there was a Muppet Show today, because they make so much money, so we don't need to make an extra $10,000 for, or so much money to appear on a kids show. They don't want to be, probably don't want to be bothered. And of course, everybody knew the Muppets from Sesame Street, and the Muppets today were not as big today as they were back then. But take the time with your kids, get these movies on DVD or Blu-ray, and watch how the kids, and they would get. I think they would get the jokes today. Well, thank you for watching the video. Please, like the video, comment on, subscribe to my channel, and thank you for watching.